Could one woman silence an entire naval base with just a mysterious name? The morning sun cast golden hues over Naval Auxiliary Landing Field, San Clemente, where the Pacific breeze mingled with the sharp scent of jet fuel and disciplined resolve. SEALs moved in perfect unison across the courtyard, their boots echoing like a heartbeat of unbreakable loyalty. Into this sacred world strode Lieutenant Colonel Elizabeth Thorne of the United States Air Force, a vision of quiet strength with smooth white skin, neatly bunched brown hair, a sharp-featured face framed by decisive green eyes, an athletic build, and a full bust that spoke of feminine power honed by relentless training. Her presence disrupted the rhythm, an outsider in a realm ruled by tradition. Admiral Harlan Steele, rigid and unyielding at 65, stepped forward, his voice slicing the air. "Air Force women don't belong here," he barked, expelling her with contempt that reeked of deep-seated bias, stirring a quiet outrage in the hearts of those who value merit over prejudice. The courtyard froze, but then whispers rippled through the ranks. Valkyrie. One by one, hardened SEALs raised salutes, their eyes filled with unspoken reverence for a legend they thought was myth. But Steele didn't know this woman carried a deep wound that would change everything. What secrets lie behind Elizabeth's disciplined exterior in her daily life? In the bustling heart of Naval Air Station North Island, a historic beacon of American aviation since its commissioning in 1917 as the birthplace of naval flight, Elizabeth Thorne began each day with the quiet precision of someone who had learned to armor her soul against the world's judgments. The station perched on San Diego Bay, with its vast runways and squadrons of aircraft carriers standing sentinel, was her sanctuary, a place where the hum of engines drowned out the whispers of doubt. She moved through the hangars with purposeful grace, her smooth white skin glistening under the California sun, brown hair neatly bunched beneath her cap, green eyes scanning every detail with unwavering focus. Her athletic build, shaped by years of relentless training, and the subtle curve of her full bust beneath her uniform, spoke of a woman who embodied strength without apology. Yet she carried herself with an unassuming humility that belied her extraordinary skill. Each morning, Elizabeth inspected her F-22 Raptor, that marvel of modern engineering, a twin-engine stealth fighter capable of cruising at supersonic speeds, exceeding Mach 1.5, without afterburners, its sleek design rendering it nearly invisible to enemy radar through advanced avionics and radar-absorbent materials. As her hands traced the fuselage, she embodied the discipline that had become her lifeline, a life skill forged in the fires of adversity. Focus under pressure, resilience in isolation, the quiet power of turning inward to build unshakable resolve. These were lessons not just for pilots, but for anyone facing life's unyielding storms, reminding us that true strength often whispers rather than roars. Yet beneath this routine lay the biases that chipped away at her spirit. Male colleagues secure in their traditions teased her appearance with sidelong glances and murmured jests, "Too pretty for the cockpit," or "Air Force sends their eye candy," dismissing her expertise because of her gender. It stirred a deep-seated outrage in the soul, a reminder of how far we've come since the days when women were barred from the skies, yet how echoes of inequality lingered. Elizabeth endured it all in silence, her jaw set, knowing protests would only fuel their prejudices. She had learned that endurance was its own form of victory, a quiet rebellion that preserved her energy for the battles that mattered. But the real secrets dwelled in her inner wound, a scar that time could not fully heal. In quiet moments, flashbacks pulled her back to the rugged valleys of Afghanistan, where dust-choked skies and relentless firefights had claimed so many lives, including her brother's. He had been part of a unit pinned down in a 2009 ambush, one of the thousands of American losses in that long war, where over 2,000 brave souls gave everything from 2001 to 2021. Elizabeth, flying close air support, had pushed her limits to extract them, but the chaos was unforgiving. Blamed by superiors for a split-second decision amid the fog of war, she carried the guilt like a shadow, whispering doubts that she wasn't enough. It was then, in the aftermath, that she etched the eagle tattoo across her back, a majestic symbol of freedom and vision wings, spread wide as a vow to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, to rise above the pain and soar. These memories intertwined with the humanistic warmth of her elderly mother's letters from Texas, fragile pages filled with love and reminiscence. "My dear Lizzie," one read, "your father would be so proud he flew those old Mustangs in World War II, dodging flak over Europe, coming home with stories of brothers lost, but bonds unbreakable. He taught us that family is the anchor in any storm." The words evoked reflective emotions, stirring nostalgia for a generation that knew sacrifice, intimately touching the hearts of those who remember the greatest generation's quiet heroism. In her mother's frail handwriting, Elizabeth found solace, a reminder that her path was part of a larger legacy of resilience, where personal discipline mirrored the life skills passed down through families touched by war: perseverance, forgiveness, the courage to face biases head-on. Then the Pentagon order arrives, pulling her into the storm. Is this mission an opportunity or a fateful trap? The sealed envelope from the Pentagon arrived like a thunderclap, shattering the fragile peace Elizabeth had woven into her daily routine at North Island. As she tore it open in the dim light of her quarters, the words leaped out: a classified joint operation to support Navy SEALs in rescuing American hostages held by insurgents in the rugged mountains of northeastern Syria. This wasn't just any assignment. It was a high-stakes fusion of air and naval forces, where her F-22 Raptor would provide critical aerial overwatch, coordinating precision airstrikes to clear paths for ground insertions, evading enemy radar with its stealth capabilities and ensuring safe extractions under fire. Drawing from the legacy of joint special operations, like those under the U.S. Special Operations Command, that unites Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, and Air Force pilots in seamless harmony. Elizabeth's role demanded flawless timing, her jet's advanced sensors detecting threats from miles away, while SEAL teams navigated hostile terrain below. It was a testament to military innovation, where technology like the F-22's integrated avionics allowed for real-time data sharing with naval assets, turning disparate branches into a single unstoppable force. These were skills not just for warriors, but life lessons in collaboration and adaptability, reminding us that true success blooms from unity in the face of chaos. Yet, as she reported to San Clemente, the fateful trap revealed itself in Admiral Harlan Steele's unyielding glare. "This base is Navy territory," he declared, his voice laced with the weight of decades in command, rejecting her outright, despite the Pentagon's mandate. "We don't need Air Force interference, especially from someone like you." The words stung like salt in an open wound, evoking the shocking injustice of biases that had haunted her career, where merit was overshadowed by outdated notions of who belonged in the fight. It wasn't just professional dismissal. It was a personal affront, stirring compassion for every trailblazer who had faced similar walls, from the women pilots of World War II to those breaking barriers today. Elizabeth stood tall, her green eyes steady, but inside, the rejection reopened scars from Afghanistan, making her question if this was a chance to heal or another path to heartbreak. Amid the tension, a small twist unfolded, whispers of her call sign, Valkyrie, began to spread among the SEALs like a quiet wildfire. One operator murmured it with awe. Another nodded in recognition, their eyes flickering with stories of a pilot who had defied orders to save lives in distant skies. It was a subtle undercurrent, a hint of the legend she had become, without seeking it, offering a glimmer of hope amid the injustice. Emotionally, Elizabeth felt the biases clawing at her like old wounds, each rejection echoing the blame after her brother's loss, the guilt, the isolation, the relentless drive to prove her worth. It evoked a deep compassion, not just for herself, but for all who endure silent battles against prejudice, touching the soul with the raw humanity of perseverance. This mission could be her redemption, a bridge across divided branches, but the pull of doubt was strong. She almost turns away, but the past calls her name. Why does Elizabeth nearly give up in the face of biases? The Pentagon's order hung heavy in the air, a summons that promised purpose, but stirred the ghosts of old failures. Elizabeth stood alone in the shadow of her F-22 at North Island, the jet's sleek form, a silent witness to her turmoil. Steele's rejection echoed in her mind, not as a new insult, but as a cruel amplification of the doubts that had long festered within. She almost turned away, her hand hovering over the folder, as if to seal it shut forever, the weight of injustice pressing down like an unyielding storm. It wasn't just the Admiral's words. It was the way they reopened fissures in her soul, reminding her that some battles were fought not in the skies, but in the quiet recesses of the heart. The inner struggle pulled her deep into the past, a profound flashback that touched the raw essence of sacrifice and loss. It was 2009, amid the rugged peaks of eastern Afghanistan, where the war had intensified with a Taliban resurgence that claimed countless lives. Elizabeth, then a young captain, flew close air support for a joint operation, a desperate bid to extract a pinned-down unit in Nuristan province, one of the deadliest ambushes that year. Part of a conflict that saw over 300 American fatalities in 2009, alone the highest since the invasion. Her brother, Sergeant Mark Thorne, was among the ground forces, his voice crackling over the radio amid gunfire and chaos. "Valkyrie, we're taking heavy fire, need immediate CAS." She pushed her aircraft to its limits, diving through hostile skies dotted with anti-aircraft threats. Her decisions split-second lifelines in a fog of war where miscommunication could turn allies into casualties. But the nightmare unfolded in horrifying clarity. A breakdown in coordination, garbled intel from command, overlapping radio chatter led to a tragic delay. Elizabeth held position longer than ordered, firing precision strikes to hold off the enemy, but the extraction helo arrived too late for some. Mark's team was overrun. He fell, covering his comrades, one of the many heroes lost to the relentless grind of a war that demanded everything. The aftermath was a blur of investigations, and blamed superiors pointed to her reckless extension as a factor, ignoring the systemic failures in air-ground linkage that plagued such ops. The guilt consumed her, a profound wound that whispered she had failed those who trusted her most. It touched the heart with the stark reality of sacrifice, the brothers, sons, and friends who gave all, leaving families to carry the quiet burden of remembrance. In those dark nights, Elizabeth learned that true heroism often came laced with sorrow, a lesson that evoked compassion for every veteran bearing invisible scars. Back in the present, doubts assailed her like relentless waves. At San Clemente, the SEAL's initial reception amplified the outrage, teasing glances at her form murmurs of, "She's just here for show," dismissing her as an Air Force intruder, unfit for their elite world. It stirred strong indignation, a reminder of how biases eroded the very unity military life demanded. Worse, Steele's sabotage emerged, subtly delayed access to briefings, restricted hangar space, his influence casting a shadow over her integration. "We run ops our way," he had snarled in a private confrontation, his eyes cold with the entitlement of rank. It was a shocking injustice, evoking compassion for those who fought not only enemies abroad, but prejudices at home, where merit should reign supreme. Then came the small twist that misdirected her resolve. Poring over old mission logs in her quarters, Elizabeth uncovered Steele's indirect link to her brother's death. As a senior commander in 2009, he had overseen the chain of command that bungled the intel relay his signature on reports that downplayed the coordination flaws. It wasn't direct culpability, but the revelation hit like a betrayal, blurring lines between personal grief and professional duty. Was this mission a trap set by fate, forcing her to confront the man tied to her deepest pain? Yet in the depths of this crisis, the loop of her eagle tattoo emerged as a beacon. Tracing its wings across her back in the mirror, she recalled the vow etched in ink after Afghanistan: to protect, to rise to turn wounds into wings. It created positive hope, a reminder that overcoming inner crises demanded life skills like mindfulness, breathing through the panic, reframing doubt as fuel seeking solace in purpose. These were tools anyone could wield, transforming personal storms into sources of strength, inspiring resilience in the face of adversity. She almost gives up, but then an ally appears, changing everything. Who will be the mentor to help Elizabeth rise? In the charged silence following Steele's sabotage, as Elizabeth wrestled with the urge to walk away from the mission that dredged up her deepest pains, an unexpected figure emerged from the ranks, a weathered SEAL commander named Derek Vaughn, his broad shoulders and salt and pepper hair, speaking of battles fought and wisdom earned over 55 years. Vaughn had overheard the whispers of Valkyrie and recognized the name from a long-ago operation in Iraq, where a phantom pilot had turned certain death into survival for his team. Approaching her with a steady gaze that held no judgment, only quiet respect, he extended a hand. "I've heard the stories," he said, his voice gravelly yet warm, like a father's reassurance after a storm. "Legends like you don't fade, they inspire." Vaughn became her mentor in that pivotal moment, sharing his own scars to bridge the divide. Over a makeshift coffee in the base mess hall, he opened up about losing his son in a 2014 raid in Syria, a young Marine cut down by sniper fire during a hostage rescue gone awry. "He was my world." Vaughn confessed, his eyes misting with the raw grief that only time softens, but never erases. "I blamed myself for pushing him into this life, for not being there." It was a profound sharing, touching the heart, with the universal ache of parental loss, a reminder to older souls of the sacrifices woven into family legacies. To inspire her, Vaughn wove in tales of American history's unsung heroes, the Women Air Force Service Pilots, or WASP, of World War II. Over 1,000 women like Jacqueline Cochran stepped up when the nation called. He recounted, his tone reverent. They ferried bombers across the Atlantic, tested experimental jets, towed targets for live fire training, flying over 60 million miles without the glory of military status. 38 gave their lives, yet they weren't recognized as veterans until 1977, earning the Congressional Gold Medal decades later. They rose above biases, proving that strength isn't bound by gender, it's forged in the will to serve. These stories, drawn from the fabric of U.S. aviation heritage, ignited a fresh spark in Elizabeth, evoking admiration for those pioneering women who paved paths in the skies, inspiring resilience in the face of exclusion. Alongside Vaughn came an unlikely ally, Ryan Hayes, a young SEAL lieutenant in his late 20s, initially skeptical with his crew-cut intensity and arms crossed in doubt. Air Force. "What's a pilot like you doing slumming with us ground pounders?" he quipped during their first joint training session, his words laced with the teasing bias that had become all too familiar. But as they drilled through simulated extractions, Elizabeth guiding from a mock cockpit, while Hayes led ground maneuvers, their dynamic shifted. In heartfelt dialogues, amid the sweat and strategy, Hayes confessed his own reservations. "I lost buddies because air support bailed too soon. Didn't think a woman could handle the heat." Elizabeth met his gaze steadily. "It's not about gender. It's about keeping promises." Through rigorous exercises where she demonstrated the F-22's role in real-time threat detection, Hayes moved from doubt to trust. His nods turning to genuine respect. "You're the real deal, Valkyrie." He admitted one evening, the camaraderie blooming like a hard-won bond. The humanistic warmth deepened when they shared family letters around a flickering campfire on the training grounds. Elizabeth pulled out her mother's latest missive, reading aloud, passages of encouragement that echoed Vaughn's tales. "Your path reminds me of those WASP women your grandpa admired," her mother wrote, evoking reflective emotions on camaraderie, the unbreakable ties that sustain warriors through isolation. Vaughn added his son's last letter, a poignant note of pride, stirring compassion for the shared human experience of love and loss. In these moments, barriers dissolved, fostering a sense of belonging that transcended branches and biases. Now she must cross the threshold to hell. Can Elizabeth prove herself in harsh training, with Vaughn's mentorship and Hayes's budding trust anchoring her resolve? Elizabeth stepped across the invisible line that separated hesitation from commitment, plunging into the grueling world of joint exercises at San Clemente. The threshold was no mere formality. It was a gateway to hellish simulations designed to forge unbreakable teams, where the Pacific winds whipped across mock battlefields and the roar of engines mimicked the chaos of real combat. Here, under the watchful eyes of skeptical SEALs and Steele's distant scrutiny, she embraced the first challenge, a simulated airstrike, to support a ground insertion where her F-22's capabilities would be tested against virtual enemy defenses. The exercise unfolded on a vast training range, replicating the Syrian mountains with rugged terrain props and electronic threats. Elizabeth climbed into the cockpit simulator, her heart pounding as the scenario loaded a SEAL team led by Vaughn, pinned down by simulated insurgents with anti-aircraft systems. Her role: provide aerial overwatch, clearing the path with precision strikes while evading detection. This was where the F-22's stealth tactics shone, a blend of engineering marvels that made it a ghost in the skies. Its radar-absorbent materials and angular design deflected enemy radar waves, allowing it to approach undetected, while integrated avionics fused data from sensors to create a god's-eye view of the battlefield. In training like this, pilots learn to exploit Super Cruise sustained supersonic flight without afterburners for rapid positioning, striking from beyond visual range before foes could react. These tactics weren't just technical feats. They embodied life skills of anticipation and precision, teaching that in any endeavor, seeing the unseen and acting decisively could turn peril into triumph. As the simulation ignited, multi-layered conflicts erupted like a storm. Internally, her haunts from Afghanistan clawed at her focus. Flashbacks of lost voices over the radio, the guilt of decisions made in split seconds, whispering that she might fail again, that her presence endangered those below. The eagle tattoo burned against her skin, a silent reminder amid the turmoil, but doubt lingered, touching the soul with the vulnerability of human frailty. On the group level, opposition flared. Some SEALs, still swayed by biases, grumbled over comms. "Hope she doesn't bail like last air support." Their words a sharp jab that fueled outrage at the persistent divide between branches and genders. Hayes, now an ally, defended her quietly, but the tension thickened when Steele's influence manifested a glitch in the sim that ramped up enemy radar sensitivity, sabotaging her stealth edge. It was a subtle blow, evoking compassion for the quiet warriors who battle not only foes, but the very systems meant to support them. The crisis peaked as Vaughn's virtual team faced overwhelming fire. Elizabeth maneuvered her simulated Raptor with expert grace, employing stealth tactics to slip through the radar net, angling her jet to minimize signature, using terrain masking to hug the digital hills. Detecting the threats first, she locked on with beyond visual range missiles, neutralizing the anti-air positions in a barrage of precision. But a hit grazed her aircraft, forcing an evasive spiral that tested her limits, thrust vectoring nozzles, pivoting for impossible turns, a capability that allowed the F-22 to outdance adversaries in close quarters. In that heart-stopping moment, as alarms blared and the sim threatened to eject her, the Eagle Loop resurfaced. She visualized its wings spreading wide, reminding her of the vow to protect, infusing her with positive hope and the strength to stabilize. With a final strike, she cleared the path, saving Vaughn's team from wipeout, their virtual cheers crackling over the link, a triumph that silenced doubters and bridged the inner chasm. But the real chain of challenges is just beginning. As the F-35 Lightning II pierced the veil of night over the shadowed valleys, Claire gripped the controls, her heart a steady drum against the hum of the jet's twin engines. The mission had escalated into this pre-climax crucible, where every decision teetered on the edge of triumph or tragedy. Below, the SEAL team slithered through hostile terrain, their objective a fortified compound, holding high-value hostages. Claire's role was the unseen guardian, providing overwatch with the aircraft's unparalleled sensor fusion, a technological symphony that blended radar infrared and electronic warfare data into a single crystal-clear battlespace picture. It was the kind of innovation that turned pilots into omniscient warriors, allowing her to detect threats miles away and respond with lethal precision. The first whisper of crisis came as thermal signatures bloomed on her displays, a convoy snaking through the dust-choked roads, headlights piercing the dark like predatory eyes. Infrared readings spiked, suggesting armed vehicles laden with reinforcements. Claire's finger hovered over the weapons. Release her electro-optical targeting system, EOTS, locking in. This advanced pod integrated seamlessly into the F-35's fuselage by Lockheed Martin, offered high-resolution imagery and laser designation for air-to-ground strikes, its lightweight design ensuring no compromise to the jet's stealth profile. But something felt off. The IR signatures didn't match, too uniform, too deliberate, lacking the erratic heat blooms of human occupants or idling engines. Sensor fusion cross-referenced the data, no matching radio chatter, no anomalous movements. It was a decoy, a clever ruse to draw fire and reveal her position, compromising the entire team on the ground. Claire held her fire, her judgment, a blend of instinct and technology. Negative on strike, she radioed calmly, preventing what could have been a fatal exposure. The team pressed on undetected, but the cost mounted swiftly. Fuel gauges dipped perilously close to Bingo 2, the secondary warning level signaling minimal reserves for a safe return, forcing pilots to weigh every maneuver against the ticking clock of endurance. Down below, a SEAL had taken a grazing wound during a brief skirmish, his blood staining the arid soil as comrades applied hasty tourniquets. Radios began to degrade static, crackling like distant thunder interference, from enemy jammers fraying the fragile lifeline of communication. The air grew thick with urgency each second, a reminder of the human frailty beneath the machinery of war. Conflict ignited over the comms voices, sharp with the strain of lives on the line. Commander Collier, monitoring from the distant operations center, demanded adherence to standard operating procedures. Maintain SOP spacing, pull back, and regroup. He ordered his tone, unyielding, prioritizing protocol to avoid escalation. But Mason, the SEAL team, lead on the ground, pushed back with raw desperation. If we wait, we lose men. He growled, his words heavy with the weight of brotherhood, the unspoken plea for Claire to bridge the gap. That doctrine couldn't. It was a clash of caution and courage, evoking the timeless struggle of those who must balance rules with the relentless pull of saving lives. In the cockpit, solitude amplified the turmoil. Claire whispered to herself, "I stayed. Then I stay now." Her voice a quiet vow, echoing past missions where defiance had meant survival for others. The words swelled with resolve, hinting at a deeper fire, a sense that she might defy a direct abort order if it came risking everything for the team below. The audience could feel the tension coiling the pre-climax crisis, building like a storm about to break, where one woman's choice could redefine heroism. What will Elizabeth sacrifice to save the team? The Syrian night exploded into chaos as the big battle descended like a vengeful storm, the inmost cave of the mission revealing its deadly maw. The SEAL team, inching toward the insurgent compound under cover of darkness, fell into a brutal ambush, enemy forces swarming from hidden ridges, gunfire stitching the air with lethal tracers, and improvised explosives rumbling the earth like thunder. Vaughn's voice crackled over the degraded comms. "Valkyrie, we're pinned. Multiple hostiles. Anti-air inbound." Elizabeth, alone in her F-22 high above, went solo, her jet a lone predator in the hostile skies. She dove into the fray, unleashing precision strikes that turned the tide. AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles streaking from internal base, guided by the Raptor's active electronically scanned array radar to eliminate threats with surgical accuracy, minimizing collateral while maximizing impact. Each launch was a calculated symphony sensor, fusion integrating infrared and radar data for flawless locks, ensuring her strikes cleaved through enemy positions without endangering the team below. But the battle exacted its toll. As Elizabeth maneuvered to cover the SEAL's retreat, a surface-to-air missile grazed her wing, the impact shuddering through the cockpit like a fatal blow. Alarms wailed, systems flickering as hydraulic fluid leaked and avionics glitched, the plane damaged, spiraling toward catastrophe. This was life-death incarnate, the raw edge where survival hung by a thread. Tense emotions surged, her breath, ragged hands, slick on the controls, the weight of every life below pressing on her chest. It was a heart-touching sacrifice, the kind that stripped away illusions and laid bare the soul's core. Elizabeth, pushing her crippled bird beyond limits, knowing one wrong move could end it all, yet driven by the unyielding vow to protect. The cockpit felt like a coffin, closing in isolation, amplifying the fear, evoking compassion for those who face oblivion, alone, their thoughts turning to loved ones left behind. Outrage ignited when Steele's voice boomed over the command channel. "Abort mission retreat." Now that's a direct order. His words laced with the cold calculus of command, prioritized asset preservation over the men bleeding on the ground, stirring a profound indignation at the bureaucracy that sometimes valued protocol over people. Elizabeth's blood boiled. This was the man tied to her brother's fight, now abandoning heroes in their hour of need. "Negative," she replied, her voice steel, amid the storm, disobeying with a defiance born of conviction. It was a pivotal act, risking court-martial and career, but fueled by the outrage of seeing good lives discarded like expendable pieces on a board. In that maelstrom, the major twist shattered her world as systems failed, and she fought to stabilize an encrypted file from Pentagon archives flashed on her auxiliary screen, triggered by a security protocol amid the damage. It revealed Steele as her biological father, a family shock buried in social history. Decades ago, as a young officer, he had an affair with her mother, a civilian nurse during Vietnam-era deployments, abandoning them to protect his rising career in a military culture rife with stigmas against unwed fathers and distractions. He had pulled strings anonymously to advance her path, but never claimed her his signature on her brother's ill-fated a twisted thread of fate. The revelation hit like shrapnel to the heart, blending fury with aching sorrow. Social history unfolding in personal pain, evoking the hidden wounds of families fractured by duty and secrecy, touching the soul with the complexity of forgiveness amid betrayal. Educational clarity emerged in the desperation Elizabeth executed, evasive maneuvers that showcased the F-22's prowess, thrust vectoring nozzles, pivoting engines up to 20 degrees for high angle of attack turns, allowing impossible reversals that outfoxed pursuing missiles. She deployed flares in rapid bursts, decoying heat seekers while performing power loops and minimum radius, turns maneuvers honed in air shows, but lethal in combat. These weren't just aerial acrobatics. They embodied decisive life skills, quick thinking under fire, adapting to chaos, the courage to pivot when all seems lost. Lessons for anyone navigating life's ambushes. In the final moment, as the plane bucked toward doom, the eagle loop flew, a vivid hallucination of wings, enveloping her, soaring through the turmoil, infusing her with transcendent strength. She stabilized, unleashing a last barrage to clear the extraction, her sacrifice a beacon of unwavering resolve. The reward comes, but the journey isn't over. What reward matches the sacrifice? As the echoes of the Syrian ambush faded into the dawn's tentative light, the F-22 limped back to base its damaged frame, a testament to the ordeal's fury. Elizabeth guided it down with hands steady from sheer will, the cockpit still humming with the aftershocks of near death. Below, the SEAL team emerged from the extraction helo, battered but alive, every soul accounted for the hostages, freed in a blur of coordinated heroism. Vaughn clasped Hayes' shoulder, their eyes reflecting the unbreakable bond forged in fire, while the wounded operator, bandaged but breathing, managed a thumbs up. It was victory incarnate, the team surviving against impossible odds, a profound emotional satisfaction that washed over Elizabeth like a long-denied balm. The SEALs, those stoic warriors who rarely yielded to sentiment, formed a line on the tarmac, raising crisp salutes, not out of protocol but from the depths of gratitude. Valkyrie. They murmured in unison, their voices carrying the weight of lives preserved, touching the heart with the quiet power of earned respect, a reminder that true heroes uplift those around them, inspiring older souls who remember the camaraderie of bygone eras. The reward unfolded in layers, beginning with Steele's transformation. As Elizabeth stepped from the cockpit, her uniform torn and face etched with exhaustion, the Admiral approached his rigid posture, cracking under the burden of revelation. The twist of his paternity hung between them like an unspoken storm. But in this moment of reckoning, he extended a hand, not as commander, but as a man humbled. "I was wrong," he admitted, his voice cracking with rare vulnerability, apologizing for the biases that had blinded him, for the orders that nearly cost everything. It was more than words. It was an alliance born from the ashes, Steele vowing to advocate for greater integration across branches, championing equality in a military where women had fought for recognition since the days of the Wasp and beyond. This inspiring shift evoked the slow but steady progress of fairness, where merit triumphs over prejudice, stirring compassion for those who pave paths for future generations. Elizabeth nodded, the eagle tattoo seeming to pulse with quiet affirmation, accepting his remorse not for herself, but for the healing it promised. A bridge across divides a testament to resilience that could change lives far beyond the battlefield. The humanistic warmth deepened in a reflective interlude that grounded the triumph in personal roots. Back in her quarters as medics tended minor wounds, Elizabeth initiated a video call to her mother in Texas. The elderly woman's face lit up the screen, lined with years of quiet strength, her eyes welling as Elizabeth recounted the mission's peril and victory. "You did it, Lizzie," her mother whispered, pulling her into a virtual embrace that transcended distance, the hug a poignant symbol of family as the ultimate anchor. They reflected on her father's Wiwanwan service, how he had returned from European skies with tales of unity amid division, evoking nostalgic emotions for a generation that knew the cost of freedom. "He'd say you're the eagle he always dreamed of," her mother added the words, stirring compassion for the unseen threads of love that sustain us through trials. It was a moment of pure reflection, where sacrifice found its match in the simple joy of connection, reminding us that the greatest rewards are the hearts we touch and the legacies we nurture. But the return is full of surprises, our enemies still lurking. As the first rays of dawn pierced the Syrian horizon, painting the desert in hues of gold and blood, Elizabeth's F-22 clawed its way homeward, the damaged aircraft a wounded eagle fighting to stay aloft. The reward of victory lingered in the air. The team's safe hostages freed Steele's apology, a fragile bridge. But the journey back was fraught with surprises, a treacherous path where triumph could unravel in an instant. Below, the SEAL extraction helo thrummed alongside, carrying the weary warriors, their relief palpable, yet tempered by the vigilance born of survival. Elizabeth scanned her displays, her green eyes sharp despite the fatigue gnawing at her edges, knowing that the road back often hid the sharpest thorns. The escape turned perilous when the lurking enemy revealed itself, not from the sands below, but from within their own ranks. Kane, the once vocal opponent, whose biases had masked deeper treachery, exposed his true colors in a burst of static over the comms. His voice, laced with desperation, crackled, "This op was doomed. I've been feeding intel to cut losses." It was a betrayal that stung like venom, Kane bought by insurgent promises, or perhaps his own shattered faith. After losing teammates, his twist of grief twisted into sabotage. The mini-climax erupted mid-flight. Kane attempted to seize control of the helo from inside a desperate grapple with Hayes and Vaughn that threatened to send them plummeting. Elizabeth, spotting the chaos via linked cameras, dove her Raptor low, a risky intercept that demanded every ounce of her skill. She buzzed the helo with a sonic boom distraction, buying precious seconds for the team to subdue him. In the fray, Elizabeth defeated the threat, not with weapons, but with precision. Flying, herding the helo away from enemy patrols, her presence a shield that turned internal discord into unity. Kane was restrained his defeat, a cathartic release evoking compassion for the broken souls war could create, while stirring satisfaction in justice served. Conflict intensified as pursuing enemies gave chase a squadron of insurgent vehicles and drones scrambling to intercept the retreating forces. This was the raw essence of pursuit tactics, where evasion became an art form, blending ground agility with aerial dominance. On the ground, SEALs employed classic maneuvers, zigzag patterns to break line of sight, using terrain like wadis and dunes for cover, and deploying smoke grenades for visual disruption. Elizabeth, educated from above, her F-22 executed aerial pursuit countermeasures, jamming enemy radar with electronic warfare pods that flooded frequencies, creating ghost signatures to confuse trackers. She performed high-speed passes, her afterburners, flaring to intimidate without engaging, while coordinating with the helo for staggered bursts. Life skills in high-stakes evasion, teaching adaptability, and calm under pursuit, where split-second decisions mirrored navigating life's relentless chases. The conflict pulsed with tension, the pursuers closing in, forcing Elizabeth to weave through anti-air fire, her damaged plane groaning in protest. In this vortex of danger, the eagle loop manifested as a victory symbol, etched not just on her skin, but in her vision, as she glimpsed a real bald eagle soaring parallel, its wings a majestic echo of her vow. It infused her with positive resolve, a symbol of freedom triumphing over chains, reminding her that true victory was in the ascent after the fall. But then, true resurrection. How will the system bias collapse as the dust of betrayal settled and Kane's defeat marked a hard-won justice on the road? Back Elizabeth's F-22 touched down at San Clemente, its scarred hull a symbol of endurance. The base buzzed with the aftermath of the mission's success, SEALs and support crews gathering in hushed awe. But the true resurrection awaited, not in the skies, but in the heart of the institution itself. Steel, his face etched with the lines of a man confronting his shadows, called an impromptu assembly on the tarmac, the Pacific breeze carrying a sense of impending change. Elizabeth stood among them, her body weary, yet spirit unbowed, unaware that this moment would shatter the final barriers. The twist unfolded with Steele's public acknowledgement, a seismic shift that collapsed the entrenched biases like a house of cards. Before the assembled ranks, he stepped to the podium, his voice steady but laced with humility. "Today I stand corrected," he declared, his words resonating across the courtyard. Lieutenant Colonel Thorne Valkyrie didn't just complete the mission. She redefined what it means to serve. Her actions exposed flaws in our system where prejudices have no place. He announced policy changes on the spot, mandatory cross-branch training to foster unity, revised protocols, prioritizing merit over tradition, and advocacy for greater inclusion of women in high-stakes roles. It was an internal victory, a ripple that promised to reshape the military's culture, evoking the slow triumphs of equality, from the Integration Acts of 1948 to the lifting of combat bans in 2013. The crowd murmured in surprise, then erupted in applause, the collapse of systemic bias, a cathartic release that stirred hope for a fairer future, touching the soul with the power of redemption through accountability. In this crucible of change, Elizabeth's resurrection bloomed through forgiveness, a profound act of compassion that healed wounds long festering. Alone with Steele in his office afterward, the air thick with unspoken history, he revealed more letters he'd written anonymously to her mother, quiet interventions in her career, all shadowed by the fear that had kept him distant. "I was a coward," he admitted, tears tracing his weathered cheeks, "abandoning you both to chase rank in a world that punished vulnerability." Elizabeth, her green eyes meeting his with a mix of pain and understanding, felt the eagle tattoo warm against her skin. "I forgive you," she said softly. The words a release that bridged decades of absence. It was compassion for forgiveness, incarnate, not erasing the hurt, but transforming it into grace, a heart-touching moment that evoked the quiet miracles of reconciliation, reminding us that families, even fractured ones, hold the power to mend. In that embrace, father and daughter found resurrection a rebirth where love triumphed over regret. This act inspired a deeper message of resilience over gender, and family divides a beacon for all who face such trials. Elizabeth's journey showed that true strength lay not in flawless armor, but in rising from the fractures, overcoming biases that had once confined women to the sidelines, and mending family bonds strained by duty's demands. It was inspirational, echoing the stories of countless veterans who rebuilt lives after war, teaching that resilience is the quiet force that turns adversity into legacy, stirring older hearts with reflections on their own paths of perseverance and healing. The legacy begins. What will Elizabeth bring back to the world? As the echoes of resurrection faded and forgiveness mended the fractures of her past, Elizabeth returned to the familiar rhythms of North Island, her spirit reborn, yet grounded in the lessons of the ordeal. No longer just a pilot, she carried an elixir, a transformative essence distilled from sacrifice, unity, and unbreakable resolve. The base welcomed her as a quiet legend, but she wasted no time in channeling her victory into a future legacy, opening a specialized training class for women in aviation and special operations. Drawing from the pioneering spirit of the women Air Force service pilots of World War II, who ferried aircraft and tested jets without full military status, and inspired by modern integrations like the first female Rangers. In 2015, Elizabeth's program blended rigorous flight simulations with resilience workshops. Women from across branches enrolled learning F-22 tactics alongside life skills like overcoming biases and fostering cross-service alliances. It was a beacon for the next generation, ensuring that the paths she had forged would empower others to soar, touching the heart with the promise of progress, where equality wasn't a concession, but a strength. In this return, the major message crystallized, shareable and profound. The eagle flies high on inner strength, rooted in the bald eagle's symbolism as America's emblem of freedom, courage and vision since its adoption in the Great Seal in 1782, and echoed in military insignias like the Roman legion standards. Elizabeth's tattoo became a metaphor for all. It reminded that true elevation comes not from external winds, but from the internal fire that turns wounds into wings, resilience that overcomes gender divides, family rifts, and systemic prejudices. This message, easy to whisper in moments of doubt or share in stories of triumph, inspired reflection on personal legacies, evoking compassion for those who rise despite the storms, much like the eagle that soars above them. If this story touches you, like, share, subscribe. Share your challenges in the quiet afterglow of Elizabeth's journey. Her story whispers timeless truths that echo through our own lives, rich with memories and hard-won wisdom. It's a reminder that overcoming biases isn't just a battlefield triumph. It's the everyday courage we summon against prejudices of gender, age, or origin, turning shadows into stepping stones of strength. From her wounds of loss to the soaring eagle of inner resolve, Elizabeth invites us to share our legacies of endurance, equality, and family ties. Remember the Wabwidawdwi veterans who forged unity in division, or the unsung heroes in our families who rose above storms. These bonds foster compassion, weaving hope into the fabric of our communities. Let her elixir stir your spirit. Embrace that inner eagle. Fly high on your own strength and pass the flame forward. If this tale touches your heart, like, share, and subscribe. Join the conversation below with your stories of resilience, creating a shared tapestry of inspiration for all who follow.